Hi everyone, welcome to the Endless Runner tutorial part 3. In this video we will be covering obstacles, player damage, random choice of obstacles on the platforms, as well as a player health bar. Let's get started. So the first thing we're doing is just a bit of cleanup and creating a prefabs folder. We're then going to drag the platforms folder into that newly created folder, as well as create another folder called obstacles. Next up, we're going to create our first obstacle. You can use your own models if you like, or you can just grab the Flowbyte cube within the models folder. Once you've dragged that in, we're just going to rename that to something like obstacle 1 or something along those lines. And then followed up, we're going to set the tag to obstacle as well. If there is no obstacle tag within your project, then just quickly add that in. Then we just want to right click on the model and choose unpack and name that model to obstacle 1 or something along those lines. Once unpacked, you can then drag it into the obstacles folder we made earlier to make it a prefab, and then you can open it up in isolation by either double clicking it or in the project window, or right clicking it in the scene view and choosing open up in isolation. Then once in this window, we will add the following components: a mesh collider and set it to convex, as well as we're going to add a collision event script. This collision event script controls the obstacle's interaction with the player. The 4 tick boxes at the top of the script are entirely optional. However, if you tick them to true and don't have the correct components, the script will not function correctly. For the tag section, as you can see, you can add as many tags as you like if you need to, but in this case we're just going to use the player tag and the player bullet tag so they collide with the obstacle. The next thing we're going to do is drag a particle effect into this prefab and make sure the play on awake functions are all set to false. Then once your particle effect is created, you can then drag it into the empty slot inside the script, and then we will just add a sound afterwards also. The destroy time is the time it will take for the obstacle to destroy itself once colliding with something. In this case, we've got it set to 0.3 seconds just to allow some time for the particle effect and the sound effect to play out before destroying. Also, we just need to add an audio source to this prefab to allow for the sound effect to play. We then have the on collision event. This is for any extras you may want to call when the collision occurs. In this case, we're just going to use the Flowbyte logo on the model and set that to inactive on collision. This could be also used for something like adding or subtracting points. Now the next part is working with the platforms, adding these obstacles to the platforms and adding a bit of randomization, so they activate randomly on the left, middle or right lane. The script you add is called choose random event. This will give you a list of events and has a minimum and maximum range. The way that this works is, for example, we've got 6 events, so if you wanted to randomly choose between all 6, we would put the minimum and maximum range at 1 to 6. But in this case, we're just choosing 3 results, so we're just going to set it from 1 to 3. The next thing is to grab the obstacles we made before, and in this case it's just the block that we made. Create one for the left, the middle and the right lane. Then once they are positioned in, we're just going to grab all 3 and set them to inactive, because that's where the choose event script will be allowing us to set them active individually. Then once they're all set to active in the events, we will go back into the scene view and delete the obstacle in the scene view that we have, and drag the newly created platform into the platform generators list. You can press play and have a look at the platform generator doing its work. It will spawn randomly on the left, middle or right side, but there's still a little bit more work to do. Now next up, we're just going to give a bit more randomness to the obstacle itself by attaching some more obstacles that will or won't turn on during when they become active. So what we need to do is add another choose random event script to the original obstacle and choose either 1 to 3 or 1 to 4 if you wanted to have an empty game object where nothing spawns in. We've got the same block on top and two other models within the Flowbyte models folder. We have a tall one and a medium sized one. And then for these models we've just dragged in, remembering to copy the same components over to the new obstacles. So a mesh collider, a collision event script, as well as a rigid body, and also being tagged to obstacle. Then we're just going to move them up on the Y position and also rename them. And we are going to set the choose random event script to 1 to 4, so there is a chance that no obstacle will be spawned above the main obstacle. So what you'll notice is there's no damage being currently taken. So what we're going to do is start doing that now. So the first thing you need to do is we're going to make the player a prefab if you haven't done that already, and then we will open up the model within isolation. We're going to go to the location where the collision will happen. In this case it's the head. We add a sphere collider and get the radius roughly correct, making sure it's a little bit bigger than the head, remembering also to tag it to player. And also we just need to add the player collision script. This is what controls the collision against something in the first place. So in this case we have to add a few more tags, but we actually just want the obstacle one for now filled in. Then next up we're just going to add a rigid body to the head bone and set the freeze position and rotation all to true. Also you need to set the rigid body to is kinematic. We do that shortly, but we're going to show you what happens if you don't. Basically the obstacle will break, but they won't damage you and or anything like that. So just remembering to switch the rigid body to is kinematic when working with player collision. So to go over this one more time, we've set the both head bone and spine to player tag. You'll run through both boxes, but if we were to look at the player controls, you'll find we're still not receiving any damage. This is because the rigid bodies are still not set to is kinematic. So now when you play the game, you'll notice he loses health, and when he dies, the on death event will be called and the player will destroy himself when the wait and destroy time has finished. The next thing we're going to create is a UI canvas. This is going to hold our UI based stuff for the most part. We're just going to scale the screen size to 1920 by 1080, and then the reason we're doing this is to fill in the health bar just so you can see your health going down. What you can do is actually just go into the UI prefabs folder we've created and just drag in the health bar panel to the UI canvas, and then drag in the health bar panel into the player health slot. And then you can hit play and you'll see that the health bar will work. The next thing we're going to do is set the health bar script to inactive by going into the on death event on the player and setting the health bar to inactive so it disappears the moment you get to 0 health. Now all the health is working fine, but you'll notice the obstacle is not destroying when you collide with it. The reason for this is because the colliders that are taking damage towards the player, they are actually triggers, whereas the obstacle requires a collider that is not a trigger to destroy. So what we're going to do is add an empty game object to the head of the player, and we're just going to tag that player also. Add a rigid body, add a collider of some kind, making sure it's not a trigger, and then set the rigid body that you just added to that empty game object to is kinematic and frozen on all rotation and position. Now once you've done that, you can then go ahead and hit play, and you should find all your player detection collision is currently working in regards to the obstacles. You can get hurt, you can run through them, it hits you once and also destroys the obstacle depending on which one you actually hit. You can also just jump over them. And this also actually finishes up this tutorial. Within the next tutorial, we will start to add some more UI, starting with the score system as well as a speed boost collectible. Thank you for watching.